Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and due to your incredible feedback on my last Lost Maps of World of Tanks video, I've got another one for you. Let's take a look at some more of the maps now no longer in the game, the Lost Maps of World of Tanks. Hidden Village was a beautiful looking map that arrived for Christmas 2013 in patch 8.10 along with all of the Japanese tanks. Now originally this map was very small indeed. All of this area that you see towards the northeast corner of the map was impassable all the way along here. And even though the map is 1 kilometer squared, this gigantic mountain that you see towards the southwest hand corner pretty much chokes out, I'd say, a third of the map's volume. And so really Hidden Village was one of the smallest 1 kilometer maps in the game, and Wargaming tried to extend it in patch 9.2. And the reason for that is that until this area that was added in here, the corridor fights were down through the town, people dominating the middle, also punishing anyone that tried to make their way through the town, and then a rather boring trundle along the south of the map. And gameplay wise, as you would expect, you'd have your heavies trundling between these rocks trying to gauge opportunistic fire along with the tank destroyers. The mediums and tanks with good gun depression would try and spot out from the middle along with light tanks. And anyone who was brave enough to try and flank through the town eventually ended up in this very awkward situation where you had to make quite a dash across here, getting all sorts of hits from opponents that would shoot you from here, here, and up here, and let's not even start about the artillery that would be hiding at the back of the map. Now, irrelevant of the choke points or the size of the map, I quite enjoyed the gameplay on Hidden Village, and so I was very surprised when Wargaming removed it in patch 9.10. South Coast arrived with Dragon's Ridge in patch 7.3 in May 2012, and a lot of people really enjoyed this map, especially the ones that never had to leave base, because there were some fantastic opportunities for tank destroyers and players who just don't like to drive a lot to have lovely opportunities for fire. South Coast will be fondly remembered by me as a map with opportunities for pretty much every class of tank in the game. Light tanks, I used to love to try and work this ridge line. You could be able to spot your opponents before they even reached you, or alternatively on the other side, exactly the same. I love the way that you could fall back in a light tank as well. I think that South Coast really rewarded mobility because there were multiple avenues for you to be able to escape when you got yourself cornered, which, to be honest, was almost impossible on this map. The game didn't force you to fight your way down the east, however. If you were brave, you could try and make your way towards the center and try and hide behind these rocks here. From positions such as this, you could gain good view range over all of the areas of the map, but you just had to be really careful to not get spotted in the first place, otherwise you would be severely punished. South Coast was really interesting for sneaky tanks as well, because all of these mounds here were fully traversable. You could make your way up here and look for opportunistic fire and just have gigantic swaths that you could try and punish any enemy tank all over the map. Alternatively, along the west, you could fight your way along the coast. Lots of heavy tanks love to turn this into a corner fight, where you were pretty much safe from artillery unless they had a fantastic shell trajectory. Eventually, after the west was won, you would advance round and be able to hopefully fight up along the north corridor or the south corridor of the map to make your way towards the enemy base. And I tell you what, on South Coast, I think I had some of the most interesting base fights in the game. Trying to push your way up here, you would quite often have vehicles still camping over here. You could shoot them in the side, you could try and dig them out, and digging out your opponents that were in these locations just provided the rest of your team in other areas of the map great opportunities. The fact that there were pretty much 5 avenues that you could try and progress towards the enemy base provided lots of opportunity on South Coast, but there was one very overpowering meta on this map. The northern spawn could frankly just sit behind here in artillery cover, move over here and kill everyone all the way over this part of the map, and then change sides, and then also kill everyone who made their way over this part of the map as well. This location was just far too dominant, and you might have seen some incredible T95 gameplay on this channel, purely based on the fact that this location on the map was completely overpowered. And in fact, spawning north in a T95 on South Coast was probably the best tank The best map and the best position you could ever hope for, because you could just keep the whole of the rear of your tank covered and kill your opponents one by one as they advance towards you. This position pretty much killed off South Coast, and while it had a good run, it was removed from the game in patch 9.12. So now we're looking at Severogorsk, a map that was added in patch 8.7 in July 2013, with 3 definitive corridors in true wargaming fashion to try and progress down. Originally, Severogorsk did not look like this. The whole of the east of the map was raised up, which allowed people to get crazy opportunities for fire along the middle and also towards the west. However, in patch 9.0, this was completely leveled out and turned into a stereotypical corridor fight, albeit with 2 opportunities to be able to progress, and an also really funky position here that you could try and sneak some shots through. If instead you chose to go west on Severogorsk, you didn't really have too many opportunities, just a single corridor to try and push through that was notoriously difficult, and unless you were a dominant heavy tank or tank destroyer, you were probably going to lose a lot of your hit points. When you reached the other side, however, you were truly rewarded. Opportunities of fire from here quite often would catch self-propelled guns or tanks ill-prepared, but you wouldn't want to hang around here for too long because the artillery are most likely to focus you if they're in the other corner of the map, or alternatively, light tanks, tank destroyers, anything could be waiting to be able to get some side shots into your turret, and you'd more likely want to try and progress down towards this building, or alternatively into the cover over here, to then start to try and mount an offensive towards the enemy base. The main problem of Severogorsk, however, was the fact that the east and the west was just still too dominant, and this whole central area of the map was just not really very used. It might look tempting for heavy tanks to try and progress down through the middle here, but all that really happened is they became easy meat for anybody who got a little bit of altitude and an opportunistic fire on them. However, there is still one really cool thing remaining about Severogorsk, and that is this little Easter egg. However, there is still something really cool on Severogorsk, and that is a little Easter egg that's hiding away in the garage here. It is indeed a Sturmtiger, which if you use a free camera, you can sneak a glimpse at. I wonder if we'll ever see this vehicle in the game. And so finally, this video would not be the last maps of World of Tanks if we were not looking at the Port map, a map that was added in patch 7.5 in August 2012. Port certainly lived up to its name. Along the south of the map, you've got a very industrial vibe, which was continued towards the center with all of the rail and the train tracks that we see here. That was one of the key problems with Port, actually, funnily enough. Back then, Wargaming hadn't fully fixed their physics engine, and so by just going over these train tracks here, you would lose a hell of a lot of speed. I'd really like to see what Port would be like now with all of the new physics in the game, and whether this would speed up progressing from the south to the north. Port was a real novelty in World of Tanks, pretty much nothing like we have now, with the bridges that went over the center of the map, pretty much, shall we say, a bait or a trap for players to try and progress over. Because of course, if you tried to progress over these, unless you were in a very low profile or very fast tank, you're likely to get shot from pretty much everywhere on the map, but it did provide you with good opportunities for spotting your opponent. You'd quite often be able to catch a glimpse of self-propelled guns that are most likely going to be hiding around at the back here. Yeah, there they are. But most likely, if you did make it to the end of the bridge safely without getting taken out, some kind of medium tank would be there to meet you on the other side. And so Port pretty much became a fight down the west and a fight down the east, with some opportunities for medium tanks to be able to try and dominate the middle. These positions here with these lovely ridge lines was absolutely fantastic for vehicles with gun depression, and you could take some punts along the west and also get some shots along the east. It truly was very dominant, and also you got a lovely, quite often you got lovely 1 versus 1s in this location here. Otherwise, medium tanks would most likely try and fight it out around this, I guess, these sediment deposits that are along here, or building aggregates, and then we would fight it out and try and progress along these ridge lines to try and get towards the enemy base. This was another one of my favorite locations, especially if you're in a platoon. If you've got 3 tanks with gun depression along here, you could simply dominate the matchup. And once you've taken these walls out, your opponents would try and side scrape off these kind of barrels here, these storage containers, but because you had most of your hull hidden, and only exposing your turret, you'd be able to take them out. I guess the problem with Port is that it wasn't symmetrical, right? Like we see, pretty much every map in the current rotation of World of Tanks is symmetrical, and Port certainly was not. And I think the lack of symmetry can be very confusing for a new player. Oh, and I just forgot one awesome thing about Port was the fact that a lot of the self-propelled guns would try and hide in this southwest hand corner, and quite often you'd be able to push them off into the water, or alternatively, I think there's even a video on this channel where I'm playing an AMX 5120 where I dive bomb onto an artillery who's trying to drown himself to secure a top gun. Now, while I probably wouldn't claim that Port was one of my favorite maps in the game when it was removed in patch 8.10, gosh, that's a long time ago now. Now, while I won't claim that Port was one of my favorite maps when it was removed all those years ago in patch 8.10, I think it did provide a lot of variety to the game. Port felt unlike any other map in the game, and I think that made it quite entertaining and just made the matchmaker feel more varied. Which brings me to the conclusion of this video. Don't you think it was about time that we started to see some new maps in World of Tanks that wasn't Kharkiv city map, Pilsen city map, Paris upcoming city map, although it does have elements that still could be playable for a variety of tank types. Wargaming evidently have a huge wealth of maps that they could easily put back into the game, and would it be a hell of a lot of fun if they just brought them back for a patch or two? And so hopefully you enjoyed this trip down memory lane. If you did, please consider giving this video a like, it really helps the channel out. And if you want to see my last Lost Maps of World of Tanks video, then simply click through up here or use that more info icon in the top right hand corner of your screen. And also let me know in the comments down below if there are specific videos a bit like this one that you'd like me to feature on the channel. I probably don't listen to your feedback quite enough. I'm kind of doing my own thing. It's kind of working out, but I really want to be giving you more of what you guys want to see as well. So make your suggestions there. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.